Learning objectives. After completing this module, learners will be able to describe and understand the various kinds of devotional paths people adopted in the 1,000-year period. Describe and understand the role of bhakti in caste-based society. Understand the lives of saints and gurus who emerged in these centuries and the impact they created. Describe and understand the coexistence of various religions. The idea of a supreme God. Different forms of devotion or love of God evolved in the form of bhakti and Sufi movements since the 8th century. Before large kingdoms came into existence, different groups of people worshipped their own gods and goddesses. Growing towns, trade, and empires paved way for new ideas. A belief that all living things pass through endless cycles of birth and rebirth based on their good or bad deeds gained acceptance amongst people. It was widely being accepted that human beings were not equal, even at birth. Birth in a noble family entitled one to social privileges. Those who dismissed these ideas followed the teachings of Buddha or Jainas. They emphasized the personal efforts could dilute social differences and disrupt the cycle of rebirth. The followers of Bhagavad Gita believed in a supreme God who, if approached with devotion or bhakti, could emancipate humans from such bondage. This belief was widely accepted in the early centuries of the Common Era. Shiva, Vishnu, and Durga, the omnipotent deities, were worshipped through elaborate rituals. Gods and goddesses of different regions came to be worshipped like them. Eventually, the Puranas started acknowledging that everyone, regardless of his caste status, could receive God's grace. The concept of bhakti had a mass appeal, and even the Buddhists and Jainas adopted them. Nayanars and Alvars. New religious movements led by Nayanars, Shiva devotees, and Alvars, Vishnu devotees, developed in the 7th to 9th centuries. They belonged to divergent castes including the untouchables like the Pulayar and Pannars. They did not appreciate the Buddhists and Jainas and maintained that only love of Shiva or Vishnu led to the path of salvation. Influenced by the ideals of love and heroism in Sangam literature, the Nayanars and Alvars composed beautiful poems praising deities of the villages. The 63 Nayanars came from different caste backgrounds like potters, untouchable workers, peasants, hunters, soldiers, brahmanas, and chiefs. Appar, Sambardar, Sundarar, and Manikkavasar were some popular Nayanars. Tevaram and Tiruvakam are two sets of compilation of their songs. Of the 12 Alvars, the most prominent ones are Periyalvar, his daughter Andal, Tondaripoddi Alvar, and Nambalvar. Divya Prabandham is a compilation of their songs. Between the 10th and the 12th centuries, to strengthen the bond between the Bhakti tradition, the temple worship, the Cholas and Pandyas built exquisite temples around the shrines visited by these saints. Philosophy and Bhakti. Shankara, one of the greatest religious philosophers of India, was born in Kerala in the 8th century. He endorsed Advaita, or the doctrine of oneness of individual soul with the Supreme God. He considered Brahman, the only and ultimate reality, to be without any form or attributes, and the world around us an illusion or maya. According to him, salvation could be attained by renouncing the world and understanding the true nature of Brahman through knowledge. Ramanuja was born in Tamil Nadu in the 11th century. He had a strong Alvar influence on him. According to Ramanuja, Vishnu Bhakti or devotion was the best means of attaining salvation. The divine Vishnu helps the devotee to unite with him. He propounded the doctrine of Vishishta Advaita, according to which the soul, when united with the Supreme God, remains inseparable yet distinct from the Supreme Entity. Ramanuja's teachings inspired a new tradition of bhakti in North India later on. Vasavanna's Virashaivism. The Virashaiva movement was spearheaded by Basavanna and his companions Allamma Prabhu and Akkamaha Devi in Karnataka in the mid-12th century. The Virashaivas strongly stood for the equality of all human beings and against the discriminatory Brahmanical ideas about caste and ill treatment of women. Virashaiva vachanas are vachanas or verses composed by Basavanna. The saints of Maharashtra. A good number of saint poets emerged in the period between 13th to 17th centuries. Their simple songs in Marathi were an inspiration to the people. Jnaneshwar, Namadev, Eknath and Tukaram, and women like Sakhubai and the family of Chokhamela of the untouchable Mahar caste were the most notable of all. Bhakti tradition in this region was devoted to Vithala, a form of Vishnu, installed in a temple in Pandharpur. These saint poets opposed ritualism, outward display of piety and caste distinctions based on birth. They did not believe in renouncing the world. They lived the life of a householder and helped the needy people alongside. To them, bhakti meant sharing others' pain. Nathpanthis, Siddhas and Yogis. Nathpanthis, Yogis and Siddhacharas were other religious groups that came into existence during this period. They condemned the ritualistic beliefs and conventions of other religions and social order. They favored renunciation of the world. According to them, salvation could be achieved by meditating on the formless ultimate reality and achieving oneness with it. To accomplish these, they suggested intense training of the mind and body. It included yogasanas, breathing exercises, and meditation. Since they followed no caste discrimination, they were extremely popular among the low caste. Their form of devotional religion became popular in northern India. Islam and Sufism won. The sons and the Sufis had much in common, so they embraced each other's practices and ideas. The Muslim mystics called Sufis were against any kind of outward religiosity or attachments. They favored love and compassion for all fellow human beings and selfless devotion of God. In the 8th and 9th centuries, the Islamic scholars interpreted various aspects of the Shariat, holy law, and doctrines of Islam, which steadily became more complex. Sufism stressed on a personal relationship with God, shunning meaningless rituals and codes of behavior directed by the Muslim clergy. Similar to saint poets, the Sufis too expressed themselves through poignant poems and literature with ample anecdotes and fables. Ghazali, Rumi and Sadi were some of the great Sufis of Central Asia. Sufis believed that heart can be trained to perceive the world from a different perspective. Zikr, chanting of a name or sacred formula, contemplation, sama singing, raqs dancing, discussion of parables, breath control, etc. Under a master or peer's guidance were various ways employed to train the mind. This led to the emergence of silsila or lineage of a Sufi teacher. Each one laid down a different method or tariqa of instructions and ritual practices. Islam and Sufism too. From 11th century onwards, a good number of Sufis migrated to Hindustan from Central Asia. The establishment of Delhi Sultanate gave an impetus to the movement, resulting in major Sufi centers developing across the subcontinent. Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti, Ajmer, Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki, Delhi, Baba Farid, Punjab, Khwaja Nizamuddin Aulia, Delhi, and Banda Nawaz Gisudaraz, Gulbarga were the most revered and prominent teachers of the Chishti Silsila. The Sufi masters conducted assemblies in their khanqahs or hospices meant for travelers to rest. Their congregation included the members of the royalty and nobility, along with the ordinary people. The devotees usually discussed spiritual matters, sought the blessings of the saint in resolving worldly problems, and attended the music and dance sessions. It was believed that Sufi masters, gifted with miraculous powers, were capable of relieving them of all sorts of troubles and also curing illnesses. A Sufi saint's tomb or dargah, regarded as a place of pilgrimage, was thronged by thousands of people of all beliefs. New religious developments in North India. 1. A new kind of bhakti movement flourished in North India post-13th century. During this age, Islam, Brahmanical Hinduism, Sufism, various streams of bhakti, and the Nathpans, Siddhas and Yogis influenced one another. New towns and kingdoms were shaping up and people were acquiring new vocations and roles for themselves. Common people, especially the craftspersons, peasants, traders, and laborers, flocked to these saints and imbibed their teachings. Saints like Kabir and Baba Guru Nanak dispensed with all orthodox religious. Saints like Tulsidas and Surdas accepted the prevailing beliefs and practices but wanted them to reach all. Tulsidas recognized God as Rama and composed the Ramacharitamanasa in Awadhi, a dialect of Hindi spoken in eastern Uttar Pradesh. It is an expression of extraordinary devotion and exceptional literary work. Surdasa's bhakti centered around Krishna. Hence, he composed and compiled Sur Sagara, Sur Saravalli, and Sahiti Lahiri, all praising Krishna. New religious developments in North India too. Shankara Deva of Assam, late 15th century, was a Vaishnavite recommending worship of Vishnu. He composed poems and plays in Assamese. He began the practice of setting up namghars or houses of recitation, and prayer which still continues. Other most noted saints of this tradition are Dadu Dayal, Ravidas and Mirabai. Mirabai, a Rajput princess, was married into the ruling family of Mewar in the 16th century. She became a disciple of Saint Ravidas, who belonged to an untouchable caste. An ardent devotee of Krishna, the bhajans she composed, praising Lord Krishna, express her deep devotion. Through her songs, she challenged the norms set by the upper castes, which earned her fame in Rajasthan and Gujarat. The Bhakti saints mostly composed their lyrics in the regional languages and could be sung. It made them popular amongst the poorest, the most deprived communities, and women. They passed on these songs to the future generations through oral tradition. They also added their own experiences to the songs. Cutting across barriers of caste, language, or religion, Mirabai's songs are an intrinsic part of our culture today. A closer look, Kabir. Kabir lived in the 15th–16th century. He is considered to be the most powerful saint. A Muslim Julaha or weaver family raised him in or near the city of Banaras or Varanasi. The wandering singers sang Kabir's verses called Sakhis and Pads and spread his ideas far and wide. Some of these later became part of the Guru Granth Sahib, Panchavani and Bijak. Kabir's vehement rejection of major religious traditions forms the basis of his teachings. Kabir forwarded the idea of one supreme and formless God. He preached that the only way to attain salvation was through bhakti or devotion. He openly criticized ritualistic worship of both Brahmanical Hinduism and Islam, the undue importance of the priestly class and caste system. He mostly composed his poetry in a dialect of spoken Hindi so that it could be understood by the masses. Sometimes, his use of cryptic language made it difficult to follow. He was followed reverentially by both Hindus and Muslims. A closer look, Baba Guru Nanak 1. Baba Guru Nanak, 1469 to 1539, founder of Sikh faith, was born in Talwandi, Nankana Sahib, in Pakistan. He travelled widely and eventually set up a centre at Kartarpur, Dera Baba Nanak by River Ravi. Guru Nanak and his followers regularly worshipped by singing hymns composed by him. Regardless of their former creed, caste, or gender, Guru Nanak's followers ate meals together in the common kitchen, langar. The space used to assemble and sing praises of God were called dharamshals by Baba Guru Nanak. These places later on came to be known as Gurudwaras. A few days before his death, in 1539, Guru Nanak chose one of his followers, Lehna, as his successor. Lehna was later known as Guru Angad. Guru Angad put together the compositions of Baba Guru Nanak and also added his own in a new script called Gurmukhi. The three successors of Guru Angad composed under the name of Nanak. Guru Arjan compiled these compositions in 1604. The compositions of other preachers like Sheikh Farid, Sant Kabir, Bhagat Namdev and Guru Tegh Bahadur were also added. A closer look Baba Guru Nanak too. In 1706, Guru Gobind Singh, son and successor of Guru Tegh Bahadur, authenticated this compilation, which came to be known as the Guru Granth Sahib, the holy scripture of the Sikhs. The number of Guru Nanak's followers increased many-fold through 16th century under his successors. He also maintained that regardless of caste, creed or gender, each one could attain liberation. Three terms Naam, right worship, Dan, welfare of others, and Isnan, purity of conduct, summarize his teachings. The three rules of his teachings today are remembered as Naam Japna, Kirt Karna, and Vand Chhakna. Most part of Ramdaspur, Amritsar town, developed in the beginning of the 17th century around the central Gurudwara called Harmandir Sahib or Golden Temple. It was a self-sufficient, self-governing town. Modern historians refer to the early 17th century Sikh community as a state within a state. Mughal Emperor Jahangir saw Guru Arjan as a threat and ordered his execution in 1606. The Sikh political movement that evolved in the 17th century resulted in the initiation of the Khalsa by Guru Gobind Singh in 1699. The community of Sikhs called the Khalsa Panth assumed a separate political identity. A closer look, Martin Luther. Religious upheavals were witnessed in Europe too in the 16th century. Martin Luther, 1483 to 1546, was an important leader responsible for many changes within Christianity. According to Luther, many practices in the Roman Catholic Church were against the teachings of the Bible. He favored the use of the language spoken by the ordinary people rather than Latin. He translated the Bible into German. He was strongly opposed to the practice of making donations to the church to gain forgiveness from one's sins. Due to the growing use of the printing press, his writings had a wide reach. Many Protestant Christian sects traced their roots to Luther's teachings. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. Different forms of devotion or love of God evolved in the form of bhakti and Sufi movements since the 8th century. Shiva, Vishnu and Durga were the supreme deities worshipped through elaborate rituals. The idea of bhakti became so popular that even Buddhists and Jainas imbibed these beliefs. A new wave of the bhakti movement evolved in North India in the period after the 13th century. Before large kingdoms came into existence, different groups of people worshipped their own gods and goddesses. During this age,